Thank you all for joining us today. My name is Martin, and I am a librarian with LA County Library. I'm not who you are here to see today. You are here to listen to some people from the Department of Public Works talk a little bit about what their jobs are, what they do every day at their jobs, and what makes their careers uh, fun and exciting, and how they keep the county a fun and safe place for all of us. So I'm going to pass it on over to y'all to introduce yourselves and tell us a little bit more about what you do. As a reminder, at the end of this, there will be a survey sent out to your email. Um, it would help us out if you took that survey. And also, if you have any questions or technical problems while the uh, panel is going on, feel free to put them in the chat, or if you have any questions, also put those in the chat and make sure that you select all panelists so that someone will see your question for sure. And we will address questions at the end of the program, but you can send them in at any time. And yeah, take it away.
My name is Donna, and my co-presenter for today is Dana, and we are representing LA County Public Works, and we're here to introduce to all of you about STEAM and what it is. But before we get into that, we wanted to let you guys all know a little bit about ourselves. So my name again is Donna Tran. I'm currently an associate civil engineer with LA County Public Works. I've actually been here for quite some time. I've been here for 7 years, intern here prior to that as well. I graduated with a Bachelor's of Science at UC Irvine in civil engineering, as well as a Master's in civil engineering at Cal State University of Long Beach. I was born and raised in Orange County, and I still reside in Orange County, Huntington Beach specifically. And I know it may sound weird, how am I working in LA County if I was born and raised in Orange County, but I've always felt a passion for LA due to the diversity of the community there. And hence I've always wanted to work for LA County. And some of my interests are, as you can see, I have on the upper picture is my husband and I actually, when we traveled to Japan, we were actually in Mario Karts. And I really enjoy traveling, but at the same time, this past 2 years has allowed us to see that we went through COVID, a pandemic, where we didn't get to travel. So I changed what I was thinking more so about experiences, whether it be going to the park, taking a hike. As long as you're with the people that you love being with, that's all that essentially matters. And of course, it all ties into my family. I have a little girl who is 2.5 now. We dressed up as Halloween scoopers while she dressed up as an ice cream cone in the bottom right picture. And of course, my dogs, I love them. They're a part of us. I've always had a dog, and right now I have a Shih Tzu and a mixed Cocker Spaniel. He doesn't really like photos, so hence only the Shih Tzu is on this photo. And then, of course, growing up, all of my interests, I loved playing puzzles. I loved challenging myself with puzzles, whether it's 50 pieces and then going into like the 100 pieces, and of course, in 1,000, 1,500. I just love problem solving. And then, of course, with Legos and specifically pink Legos, just like putting them together and making houses out of them was such a fun thing for me growing up. And at the same time, not really related to civil engineering, but kind of just relate to all types of careers out there is I enjoy playing Barbies, socializing, playing pretend with them being friends, not friends, etc. It was just such a fun thing to play pretend. And now I'll shoot it over to Dana to talk a little bit more about herself.
Thank you, Donna. Hi, everyone. My name is Dana Chalet, and I am a civil engineering assistant at the County of Los Angeles Public Works. And I got my Bachelor's of Science in Civil Engineering from Cal State LA. And currently, I am going to Cal Poly Pomona and pursuing my Master's of Science in Civil Engineering. And I will be done hopefully next month. So I'm very excited about that. And I actually grew up in the LA County, specifically in Arcadia, California. And I initially grew up first in Alhambra, but then we ended up moving to Arcadia. So I've always been in LA. And my dad also worked at the County of Los Angeles. So that also gave me an extra little push to want to pursue a career with this agency. and due to the fact that I wanted to work somewhere where I've always grown up in and give back to that community. And some of my different interests, I love going to the beach. I love to travel. As you could see that photo on the top, that's in one of the seven wonders of the world, Petra, which is in Jordan, which is like a 16 or 17-hour flight away, broken into two different flights. So it's very long to get there. And I love spending time with my family and eating food, just trying different kinds of food. I love going to different restaurants, different places in every country that I travel to. And on that bottom right photo, that is my favorite food, which is sushi, which is almost everyone's favorite. But that's a little bit about me. And on to the next slide. And my interests growing up, along with the interests that Donna had, I really like playing Jenga, Tetris, and Sudoku. I always remember whenever my family and I go on trips when I was younger, we would play a lot of Jenga later at night in the hotel room or whatever facilities that the hotel has. We would play Jenga, and my dad, he's a civil engineer as well. He always related us playing Jenga as the structure of a building. When you take this block off, it would keep it standing up straight, but if you take this one off, it would make it topple and break down. Next slide. So what is an engineer? Does anyone here on this chat have any guesses? If you do, please feel free to put it in the chat of what is an engineer. Okay, if we get any guesses by the time we get that in the chat, Donna, do you want to go ahead and say what an engineer is?
Yeah, so an engineer is pretty much everything that revolves around you. The computer you're looking at is engineered. The building you're sitting in was engineered. The lights that are lighting up the room is engineered. Pretty much engineering is all around us that makes things work, that makes things function. So we're going to dive deep into a little bit more of like the types of engineer as the next slide goes on. But everything around us is engineered basically.
So what is STEAM? Has anyone here today heard of STEAM before or know what the letters stand for? I don't see anything in the chat yet. So one of the attendees said yes, she knows what STEAM is. Do you want to share if you know what the letters stand for in the chat? Okay, as we wait for that, we could share it on the slide here as well. Donna, do you want to go ahead and share that with the group?
So S stands for science, T stands for technology, E stands for engineering, A stands for the arts, and F stands for mathematics. And so with all of this that we're talking about, STEAM, all of these components are part of the bigger word, the middle, almost the middle word, engineering. Science, technology, arts, mathematics, all encompasses in engineering. And how do you imagine the world in 10 years? Are there any guesses of how you think this world will be in 10 years? I see flying cars. Yeah, that could be really possible. What do you think, Dana? That hopefully with cleaner energy. I agree with that. Cleaner energy. What about you, Dana? What do you think the world will be like in 10 years?
Along with the cleaner energy, hopefully, and flying cars, I definitely see traveling going much faster and being in an airplane or being able to do road trips much quicker through public transportation methods.
Yeah, I definitely agree with all the comments.
So in engineering, there are different types of engineering. I'm sure many of you have heard of different engineering careers, and some of them are chemical, civil, electrical, manufacturing, nuclear, mechanical, environmental, software, and aerospace. And these different fields, you get to see them every day in your everyday lives. And Donna and I are both civil engineers, so I'm going to hand it off to her for her to talk about the history of civil engineering.
Yeah, so if you look back then, have you seen any of these images in your history books? So some of these structures were not done by specifically civil engineering, but they had the same type of mindset and critical thinking. And they built these structures as protection. So these were built out of bricks and laid by hand versus the type of equipment that we have now. And this is many years later, but still the same type of critical thinking that went into building structures. And I'm sure this, at least this particular structure, is very resemblance to some of the ones that you've seen in your history books. These are the Great Pyramids. And fast forward a little bit more, these are the Roman aqueducts. So these structures were built with more equipment, but however, not mechanical equipment. And this was a method for them to take water, fresh water, into the towns through these arches. The water travels from one end to the other. And at the same time, they acted as bridges for people to go across the waterways. And fast forward a little bit, this is what we see now, these skyscraper buildings that utilize a lot of technology and mechanical equipment in order to build something like this that takes into account earthquakes, fire, all these other natural situations that occurs within Mother Nature. And this is the Burj Khalifa, one of the tallest buildings in the world currently. And what about the future? The future, if any one of you have seen all the Teslas, we've seen electrical vehicles being driven around without gasoline. And the person who invented Teslas are thinking about this Hyperloop, which will take you from LA to San Francisco in just 30 minutes. And that is definitely something that we will probably be seeing for the future. And so now we're going to go into a little bit more of what we, each of us, do on a daily basis in terms of our work. Dana?
All right, so to give a quick overview on what the water cycle is, it's good to understand where our water comes from and the different forms of water and the process that the water does go through. So initially we have evaporation, and that occurs when the sun heats up the water and turns that water into vapor. So think about when you have your pot and then you put it on the stove and it has water and it starts boiling up. You see like little bubbles. That's basically evaporation. The water is heating up and it turns into vapor. And water from all sorts of bodies of water is evaporated from oceans, rivers, ponds, lakes, and any body of water that you can see. And then we have condensation. So if you've ever taken cold water and put it maybe in a hot cup, you see little droplets forming on the cup. That is basically condensation. So when water vapor from plants or water moves to the atmosphere, there's clouds that are formed, and then we get this water back in liquid form, such as rain. So that's where we go into precipitation. More and more water forms and collects in the clouds, and then the clouds become super heavy. And that's when we have precipitation, and the water droplets are released from those clouds. And then once we have different rain events, how is that water collected, or where does it go next? Can we go to the next slide, please? So my work specifically, I work a lot with channels. So all the water goes down into the drains and storm drains, and then when that gets filled up, it is released into something we call a channel. So channels, they prevent flooding, and they are constructed in sort of a depression that helps transport our stormwater. So these channels are usually made of concrete, and other channels can be made of, they're called soft bottom channels, which are made of clay, sand, mud, sediment, and different soils. You've probably seen them driving around the streets. Just looks like regular, maybe grassy plant areas. And channels, they provide stormwater. We get to have stormwater that is conserved, so we can save all that water and it flows without flooding any of the areas. So these channels that you may see around your homes, they help alleviate any flood risk in that area.
And further echoing what Dana was just saying about stormwater. Stormwater is basically the rainwater that comes when there is a major storm. And so when your parents are driving along the streets or you're walking along the streets, perhaps you see these openings. They're called catch basins. So water would go into these catch basins, and then it would go into a series of network called storm drains. And these are pipes. They're reinforced concrete pipes that lays all over underground underneath the streets. And from there, that storm water goes into the channels, as previously stated from Dana. And then from these bigger channels, it outlets into the ocean. So with that, what happens with this type of water? So you're looking at, oops, sorry. So you're looking at all of the type of pollutants, bacteria. If there's dirt on the rooftops of your homes, if there's oils on the driveways from the cars that your parents drive, or any business that your pets does on the grass, or any type of fertilizers that are used on the plants, all of this is considered runoff. And so this water goes into these storm drain catch basins, into the storm drains, pipes, into the channels, and then out into the ocean. So all of this pollutant and bacteria affects the quality of this water. So what do we do? So there are different types of mechanisms and types of methods that we're trying to do in order to cope with this, in order to help with the water quality of the water that's going out into the ocean. And this is a project towards the left-hand side that we did. It's a parking lot. But most of that water, any pollutants that was on that water was going straight out into the marina. But what we did was we put in these things called biofiltration systems. And what they did was it treated the water. So as water is going in, it gets treated in these chambers and does a natural biological removal of these bacteria before it goes out into the ocean. And so that is something that we're implementing all over LA County, type of treatment systems. And so over to the right, you'll see these big structures. What are we also doing is that we're putting these big structures underneath parks and open spaces so that we can capture and treat this water before we put it out, whether it back into the channel, get it infiltrate underground to recharge the groundwater, basically letting the water seep into the ground, or at least treat it and let it go back into the channel or the storm drain before it outlets into the ocean. So it's going to be overall cleaner water before it leaves. And so going on to a little bit about my personal experience, how I got into civil engineering before LA County years. I actually, my parents immigrated to America. And so I didn't grow up knowing what engineering was. In their mindset, they came to America with the mindset that the most prestigious job was to become a doctor. And so that was what was ingrained in me throughout my upbringing, that one day I'm going to become a doctor. So when I applied to college, specifically UC Irvine, I applied as a biological science major thinking I was going to be some type of doctor. But I've always loved math. I've loved math since I was probably in elementary years, even addition, multiplication. I loved it all, even on all the way to calculus. And so I started rethinking about my major. Why am I doing all of these biological science classes when I enjoy mathematics the most? And so I started switching my major into undecided and started looking into different career paths that involves mathematics and science at the same time. I do enjoy science, just not everything about it. And so hence I started talking to different peoples in different engineering fields, and that's how I got into civil engineering. And then from there, I started interning, working in the public and private sector, but I definitely enjoyed working for the public and the community a lot more. And that's a little bit about my experience. And now Dana will explain more about her experience.
So as I've mentioned before, my dad was a civil engineer, or he is a civil engineer. So that took a lot of my decision to become a civil engineer as well. But along with that, throughout high school, similar to Donna, I really enjoyed math. It was one of my favorite subjects. I've always had a really good time being in my math class. I mean, I know so many people dislike it, but for me, it was one of my favorite subjects. And along with math, I really liked creativity. And when I wanted to go to college, I really wanted to become a pharmacist. And when I saw, the different subjects that I'd be taking, I just saw that a lot of it was just a lot of memorization, and I didn't really have room for creativity or innovation. So I asked my dad what he thought, and then he reminded me of the times when I was younger when I would go with him to work, and I saw all the different plans that he had on his desk for different buildings and what he was working on. So I saw all the different creative things that he was doing at work, and I really did enjoy that. And I knew math was a big part of engineering. So I decided to not do pharmacy, but pursue civil engineering. And I was really happy with my decision. I was able to do math, and I was able to be creative and learn a bunch of interesting things. So when I was in college, I did work with also the County of Los Angeles as a student civil engineer. And I graduated and I'm working right now. And it's everything I thought it would be. I do use a lot of numbers every day, and I am able to be creative and use my innovation.
And just echoing off of what Dana just said, why I became a civil engineer, and she stated some of the reasons too, is being creative and solving problems. But most of all, we work for LA County, and being civil engineers at LA County really gives us a lot of pride because we're able to make such great differences within the footing grounds of where you all are at, and being able to provide the best service we can possibly do for the community. And so there's just a lot of reward for that. We're not working to make a profit. We're working really for the people and making it a safer, more sustainable future for everyone. And so with that, it concludes our presentation. If you all have any questions at all for us, please feel free to let us know if there are any questions in the comment box. And Mark can help us facilitate that if there are questions.
We do have one question that came in during the program. In the beginning, someone asked, is a channel the same as a wash?
Do you want me to answer that, Dana, or you want to answer that?
Up to you, whatever
Oh,
you
you
want.
can answer that first, and then I can answer.
Yeah, so the channel is the same thing as a wash. We have different channels in our flood control system. Um, we have one that's called Tahunga Wash, and it's the same thing as Tahunga Channel. It's just different verbiage.
Thank you for clarifying that for us. Let's see. What is your day-to-day work like?
I guess I can start off with that. Oh, I see a question coming in, but my day-to-day, I was working in a design division shortly before this, and my day-to-day was utilizing a type of program called MicroStation. And what I did was I drew up design plans, did calculations, depending on what type of project it was. I did relating to flood control, water quality, transportation, you name it. But recently, I switched over to a different role, and most of my days includes project management and funding, like completely different from before, but it's been enjoyable, and every day is a different experience, and it's been such a joy so far. Dana, maybe you can talk a little
And
bit about your day to day.
so my day to day, it's very similar. I have some meetings where I collaborate with my team and external team members. So we discuss a lot of different things about all the different projects. So each day is different depending on the tasks that I have for that day. It could be more meetings one day, more work on my end, where I work with myself and then just call whoever I need to call to collaborate with them. I mean, now we're doing everything virtually, but if it was in the office, we would go to someone's desk or meet in a meeting room. But now it's all on Teams or Zoom, so it's very virtual. And I do a lot of reading. For instance, we have reports for the channels. We're inspecting the channels in the LA County, so I have to review a lot of the reports that we get and review and see the data that's coming from who's inspecting the channels. So different things. Some channels have a lot of cracks, just a lot of different deficiencies that we need to fix, and a lot of work on next steps. Now that we have all the data, what are we going to do? So it's a wide range of work that we do on our end.
There's another good question in the chat, but I have a follow-up question to this. How often do you guys go out into the field? Or is it mostly behind a computer kind of stuff or mostly out in the world kind of stuff?
Yeah, personally for myself, when I was in design, we actually went out to the field in the beginning of every single project, and especially when projects are in construction. And even for emergency efforts, I don't know if all of you are familiar with the Woolsey fire a couple years ago. We actually had to fix all of the guardrails that were burned down. So we actually had to go out to the field, do measurements. And so we definitely do go out to field quite often whenever needed. And it's definitely a part of being an engineer. You got to see things in person in order to see what is needed. And speaking to the public as well, there's a lot of projects that we work on that are along near residents' homes, and we actually speak to them about what they think about this project or what they think that we should do to improve their neighborhoods. And so I think that it's very rewarding to know that what we're doing out there is very beneficial to the community.
And for myself, I go out every now and then to the field, especially now when we are doing our inspections. It's usually during the summer season when we don't have too much rain, when we know our channels are going to be dry on the drier side. So I've been going out more during this time to inspect the channels or help assist the team inspecting the channels and making sure everything's going as planned. But also, as Donna was saying, during the Woolsey fire effort, I don't know if anyone's heard about the Dominguez Channel odor incident. There was a channel near the city of Carson and Torrance and those communities. That channel has an odor and it affected a lot of residents in the area where they smell it. It's not harmful, but it's not a pleasant smell. It's more it smells like sulfur, rotten eggs. So I've been going out and talking to the residents and explaining what happened. And we've been providing them air purifiers for their homes. So that's what I've been doing, along with other things we are helping the community with. I've been doing a lot of outreach on that end and talking to the communities. So it's really exciting. As Donna was saying, as an engineer, we need to be out there and see things in person.
It is cool to hear that you all talk to the people who live in those areas about what their experience is and what they want. Someone asked about the history of the LA River. They want to know if the LA River was once a real river. Do you all know about that? A little bit about what is going on there?
I know the LA River, prior to what it looks like now, you see that it's paved with concrete. I know it's been maybe like this for almost maybe 80 to 90 years, something like that. But prior to what it looks like now, it wasn't paved. It just looked like a soft, just like sediment and soils and everything like that. But I'm not sure if it was a real river. Do you know if it was, Donna?
That I don't know. I actually don't have the answer to that. But for the most part, most of our LA River, like the channels itself, has always been something that, like Dana was mentioning, got constructed. Anything that you see that is concrete wasn't natural. And so it was definitely implemented for flood protection.
Yeah, it looks like in the chat, someone shared every river has a flooding history and pattern due to a few major floods that resulted in significant property and life loss. The river was channelized by the Army Corps of Engineers.
Mhm.
Floods. Interesting. Oh, and they shared a website, a little bit more about the LA River. I'll share that with you all. But apparently it was mostly channelized by the 30s. Oh, yeah. So Adriana shared that link in the chat. So that is some interesting history there. Let's see what other questions we've got. If you weren't a civil engineer, what would you be?
Dana, you want to answer that first?
Yeah, sure. If I wasn't a civil engineer now, I would definitely love to be a lawyer. I feel like a lawyer or a doctor, I like both of those fields a lot. With being a doctor, you can definitely be creative and innovative. You have to think once you get someone's symptoms, you need to analyze that in your brain and give them a diagnosis and what steps to take next, whether that's medication or some sort of treatment or anything. So that's really exciting. And with being a lawyer, it's kind of the same thing. You have to find different ways and methods to prove something or get an end result that your client wants. So I feel like both of those fields have a lot of innovation. So I think that would be really exciting. And you do get the end result of helping another person or another party out. So I feel like it would be rewarding in the same sense that civil engineering is as well.
Yeah, if I can definitely go back in time, I would literally start a YouTube channel, before YouTube became YouTube. But just kidding. No, actually, I'm not kidding. I really, if we can go back in time, I would totally be YouTube, try to be a YouTube star and start the whole makeup series. But now it's, in flux with so many different influencers. But I think like just something in the creative industry. I know we get to be creative as engineers, but at the same time, our creativity is also has to be in compliant with certain codes. So it's not like we're architects where we could just come up with the greatest ideas and putting things together, and then engineers just have to make it work, make sure that it's in compliant with seismic, things like that. Definitely something more in the creative industry, whether it's even web developer. Yeah, so I don't really have a concrete answer because I think that essentially I'm meant to be a civil engineer, but if I could do definitely something on the side, it would be something on the creative side and of the arts.
Thank you for sharing. That's two very different things
Yeah.
that you all have in mind. What is the hardest part about being a civil engineer?
I guess I can answer that. Thus far, so as civil engineers, we have to get our engineering license before we can actually put, like, we call it stamp our plans. And so I've stamped multiple plans and seen the actual design get constructed. And I would say just the feeling of being liable for those structures and ensuring that it gets constructed in the most safest manner, because this does affect the people within the area, people living within it. And so my always concern is my design the best? Is it good enough? And so I think that definitely that's one of the most difficult parts of at least my personal experience thus far. But it's also the most rewarding when you see it get built and it actually gets built um, in in a way where it improves the quality of life for our community members.
And then for me, the most difficult thing being a civil engineer, right now I'm doing not heavy projects, but it's more project planning. So before beginning an actual construction project, there's a planning component before that. And, as I mentioned, I'm doing a lot of inspections of the channels within the LA County, and that would help us identify which city or which specific channel has a need for a project to reconstruct that, however the method is. So the most difficult thing about that is prioritizing different areas because, as you know, our infrastructure is aging, and after a long time, it was all constructed within the same time period, the early and mid 90s. So that component of it is what do we prioritize first? Because we can't fix all of it at once. It's a lot. It's around 500 miles of channels, which is the same length from here to San Francisco. So I think the prioritization is the most difficult component.
That makes sense. And where do you see yourself in 10 years?
Personally, for me, I still see myself probably working for LA County Public Works, um, doing something completely different from what I've been doing the past like 7 or so years, which was in designing. I've designed, like I was mentioning, seeing my projects get constructed, but taking a step away from the technical aspects. I know we've spoken about like all these technical components of engineering, but on the other side, like Dana was mentioning, there's like this whole planning side. How do projects get kickstarted? How does it get funded? How do we even come up with projects? Why do we produce a water quality project at this location versus that location? So all of this goes into planning, and that's where I see myself in the future, is planning these projects, planning the future, and what is the most sustainable type of projects that we can produce as county for our community.
And similar to Donna, in the next years, I see myself still working with the LA County. It's really exciting and it's really rewarding helping out the communities, especially now that I've mentioned I was working with the Dominguez Channel odor incident effort. It is very rewarding talking to the people in the communities and helping them out. And I do see myself continuing to do that in the future. And also, before graduating, I've always enjoyed the transportation sector, but now after working on the water side, I see that I really do enjoy water, and there's just so much to do in the water sector. So I see myself definitely staying in the same area of engineering.
Awesome. It's nice to hear people say they like helping people. Um, so we have another question. Do you have any tips for girls who would like to pursue a career in STEAM since it's so heavily dominated by men?
You know, surprisingly, when I was in school, there was a small percentage of females in the engineering field. Specifically, if you're going to mechanical, electrical, there's even less females. Civil has always had more females for some reason. And as the years have progressed, it seems like it really doesn't matter whether you're a female or a male, whatever your gender is, you can pursue whatever career you want to. I think, especially the world we live in, and especially in LA County, the diversity that we have here, it honestly doesn't matter what gender you are. And although historically engineering has been seemed more predominantly male, I definitely feel like we've progressed in a way where we don't really see engineers as male or females. We just see engineers as engineers. And so whatever you want to do, just go for it, regardless of whatever field it may be or what societal expectations are telling you, oh, this should be for this type of person or that type of person. There really is no definition for that, in my opinion.
Definitely echoing off what Donna just mentioned, whatever career you see yourself fitting best in, just go ahead and do that because there really is no definition for any field or career path in this world. Whatever you enjoy doing, if you truly enjoy it, you will succeed in it. If that's engineering or any other field in this world, I've definitely had people when I first went into college and my first and second year, people that um, demotivated me from engineering because I am a girl, I am a female. So definitely, I did block all those off. So I recommend you to just do what you enjoy in the end, and you will succeed.
That sounds great. Um, do we have any other questions? We'll give you all another minute to ask some questions, see if anything comes in. If not, thank you all for joining us. We appreciate having you. Thank you to our speakers from Public Works for joining us today and sharing their experiences. I hope that everyone is now super excited to get involved in Public Works and pursue a career in engineering. And please look out for that survey in your email, and check out lacountylibrary.org for more virtual programs we've got coming up. I know we have some more cool stuff along these lines coming down the pipeline. So keep an eye out, and thanks again for joining us.
Thank you.
Thank you, everyone.